Morgan. Hi, we're live, and Morgan just arrived. This is great because that means that we're on for Dive into World Building. Today we have a guest author with us, Jessica Reisman. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
So she has this story up right now on Tor.com called Bourbon Sugar Grace. And so we're going to start by talking about that. And then at a certain point, we'll probably segue into talking about her novel, because that's going to be coming out soon. Am I right, Jessica?
Actually, it came out May 16th.
Well, there you go. So I'm a little bit off with my time. It just came out, so we should talk about it so people can know to go find it. Let's start with the short story.
Here it is.
Substrate Phantoms. There we go. There we go. All right. But I want to start with this short story. Now, this is, Tor.com, so most amazing art ever.
Yeah, oh my God, I just love that art. I was so blown away. I'm so happy.
And this, there's a lot to talk about. What came to you first for this story? Was it the character or was it the world?
It was the character. It was Fox. Actually, I mean, when it first came to me, she was on the train and was in it for the accident, and then it evolved from there. But she came to me pretty much whole, an entire.
Wow. So this train,
and it was a train.
It's funny because it's funny that you put her in there for the accident initially. So this is a train that got in an accident, but it's not your sort of typical superhero world train accident, because we're on a mining planet.
Yeah, small mining planet. And it was always that was where it was located. I mean, that whole situation of this sort of limping along society, left behind, and this character, that pretty much came together.
So describe a little bit more about the limping along society for folks who might not have had a chance to do their homework. I do not assign homework. I could put the link up, but I don't. I will lead the readers to the story, but I will not read.
Well, they're pretty much, it's a mining colony on this small planet that has pretty much been abandoned by the mining company, the corporate overlords, for reasons they're not entirely clear on. And so they're just kind of, it's not a particularly hospitable little planet, and so they're confined to a small part of it by the range of the atmosphere assistive technology, and they are kind of have banded together as a community in certain ways to survive. Mm-hmm. It's not a necessarily completely harmonious community, but they're trying to survive with what they have and what they can generate themselves. So.
And it seems like there's been such a degree of strip mining that the surface is destabilized, and there's all kinds of trouble, right?
Yeah, they mined past the point of stability in the lower, deeper layers of the ground there, and I mean, the science is probably quite iffy, but but basically they've made a bit of a geothermal lacework of the surface, and so it's given rise to what they call gurges, which is just kind of eruptions of stuff from inside the planet. So they haven't really done the planet any favors, or themselves. So it's an unstable situation.
One of the things I noticed is they seem to have two different kinds of atmosphere assistance. One is a sort of generalized regional atmosphere assistance, and another one is this thing that you call an oxygen filament.
Right, those are personal. They were all given them, implanted with them when they took the work on this planet. And there's a limited, the technology itself has a limited lifespan, and they have a limited number of them. And after they've been abandoned, children have been born, and people have needed replacements. So that resource is kind of critically limited. It's what allows them to go outside of Drumtown, which is their sort of central area where the concentration of atmosphere assistance is, and where they also have all their hodgepodge of structures covered with algae, a sort of algae lattice that assists the atmosphere as well. But that's what they need to be. They needed those oxygen filaments to be in the mines and to be out of that area.
I see. So in a way that the filaments are actually almost like an oxygen suit in a way.
Yeah, they're just a kind of personal assist.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here. Did you I mean, how much research did you do on things like I don't know, mining or any of that sort of thing?
I think mining might have been the thing I did the least research on.
Okay.
Simply because the mining portion of their lives is pretty much over. I mean, I did read, and I looked at a lot of imagery of mines, and read some first-person accounts of some mining, old accounts. But I think
what was it? Where did the bulk of the world research happen then, in terms of the mining planet?
I had a lot of research already under my belt as far as like mineral structures and stuff under the ground from a fantasy novel that I had written.
Okay.
I used a lot of that, and went back to revisit it. And a lot of the research I did was about constructing towns in inhospitable, constructing living like habitations in inhospitable environments, and just kind of read a lot of the stuff that people have been writing on living buildings and cities. I was just kind of going off of that kind of stuff. That sounds so imprecise, that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, that's cool.
But I'm very fascinated by, the stuff about building cities that the buildings are themselves living things and regenerate oxygen and like vertical farming and things like that. Water reclamation, those kinds of things I did a lot of research into.
Cool. So, very cool. And so, as far as the social structure that goes on there, give us a little window into how you approached that.
Well, I was looking at it as there being several tiers, right? There's the people who are still on planet who are higher up in the corporation. That's the the executives themselves, and then the people, the scientists, and kind of upper echelon, more professional people, but they've been abandoned too. And then the miners and the techs, the various people who like actually did the manual labor, and they make up the bulk of the society. And as the mines were played out and people stopped being able to do that work, and it became more clear that they were abandoned, those are the people who, the miners and those technical people, were the people who got together to form the co-op that Fox and her parents were part of. That's basically just trying to be as independent of the mining corporation as possible. Since, as they eventually say to representatives of the corporation, that the mining corporation is very much in breach of their contract.
Yeah. It seems like they're almost like unions in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they give the residents of the planet negotiating power in a way.
Yeah, that's definitely the intent. Is that as community they're much stronger than as a bunch of divided people. So.
Okay, and all right, and so trains going over unstable ground, you can kind of see where accidents would happen.
Okay, that all broke up. If there was a question there, can you repeat it?
No, I'm just saying it's easy to see how accidents would happen. Are we still not hearing me?
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up. And
oh no,
you're breaking up. You're breaking. Sorry. Suddenly in a movie. Yes, it's easy to see how accidents would happen. I mean, when they first, laid the tracks, which were basically, the train takes them out to the furthest mines, and there was one other settlement, basically at the end of the line, where miners lived for the furthest out mine. And so, of course, there weren't gurges. There weren't gurge eruptions and sinks and stuff like that, sinkholes, when they first laid it. But now everything's just very tenuous.
And it seems like this train line is not working anymore because it's sort of broken up.
No, it's, yeah. I mean, they've kept it limping along because there's still some people living out at that further out settlement. But it's sort of their last, it's in its last gasp. So.
Yeah, there is a very interesting sense of fragility or finality about the whole thing. Like, it's just a matter of time before we all die, kind of feeling here. And I think in a way that makes the plot more interesting because of the contrast between the vibrancy of the people who live there and their discoveries, and then this sense that things are coming to an end.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some hope there at the end.
Yeah.
Because Fox manages to, as she wants to, do the right thing at the right time. Although she has a very hard time figuring that out. But
so
yeah.
Are we worried about spoilers here?
Sorry.
Are we? No, I'm just wondering if we are, because I'm not worried about them. We can spoil away as far as I'm concerned, but I just want to, there's more to talk about if we do.
Yeah, I'm not the right person to ask because I've never cared about spoilers. but I have friends who are very sensitive to them. So
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go spoilers, 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 and then maybe we can talk about what she found on the train.
Yeah, I'm fine with spoilers. It's more about how you do it, which is going to be different.
Yeah, this is not
somebody else does it.
This is always, as I always say, this is not a book promotion place. This is a dig in kind of place. So
yeah. I mean, and for me, I've never cared about spoilers because it's just what Morgan just said. It's always for me about how something unfolds, not where it's.
You know, and it reminds me of what we were talking about with John Chu the other day, where he had set up this scenario where it wasn't about whether they succeeded or failed in this thing they were supposed to do, because if they failed, then life would cease to exist on their planet. So it was all about the how and what happened and the collateral damage and that sort of thing. So it was very, very interesting. Anyway, so there's a rock that she finds. Well, so she gets sent out, and tell us about a little bit about. She gets sent out on a mission to find a thing.
Well, yeah, it's a salvage that she works as a salvager. That's what she has found for herself to do. And her friend, basically from childhood, Ryu, gets a job from one of the scientists, one of the slightly upper tier people, and asks her to do it, sends her out to do it, because they figure, she offers a good payday for it, and they'll be able to use that to help the co-op, and help her moms and the community. So she takes all night to tramp out to where the train had its accident, and goes in there and finds a rock.
So she knows it's a rock going in?
She doesn't. Ryu puts together a little scanner to look for sort of...
it's almost like a Geiger counter scanner thing.
Yeah, it's to look for whatever specs the scientist gave him. I kind of hand-waved that. But she gave him some specs, that he could look for, that he could set up a little scanner to check for, whether it's some mineral element or whatever. So she doesn't know what she's looking for, but she finds it, and it's this rock that has this little spiral kind of crystal formation on it. And so which she thinks of as a spiral amoeba, because that's what I thought of it. So.
You know what? We're going to go with your metaphor here. I don't know what a spiral amoeba looks like, but I can totally visualize that.
Good.
Yeah, and so yeah, I want to well, I don't want to, so I want to sidetrack a little bit. I want to hear about her family. So I thought there were some interesting choices made in terms of Fox and her family.
Yeah, well, the same way that Fox kind of came to me, as as she was, her parents came to me that way too. Their names and the sense of them, and the fact that they were both her moms, even though one is physically male, and they had her in that traditional way, but they aren't traditional. I mean, they're queer. And they just kind of popped up. I hadn't even been thinking I was going to include parents, but they were there, and I had to let them be there.
Yeah.
So, and I actually came to really like them so
Yeah,
much.
I like them too, actually. They're very likable. It's kind of fun to see parents in a story, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, is like I don't know, I just wanted them to be, I think it was part of the whole sense of community thing, that no, she's not, she had these two parents who are amazing, and she still has them. And
I agree with you about the sense of community. Because in a way, one of the things that comes through in the story is the way that these people have been abandoned by their parent company, and they should just sort of be employees in some ways, but instead they're actively communities with social structure and interrelations, and again, what you said, a sense of community, which I think is one of the cooler aspects of it.
yeah, and I think that, I mean, what you were saying earlier about that there's a vibrancy to them and their lives, but it's against this like really severe tenuousness of their existence. And I mean, obviously that metaphor is pretty clear, right? It's that's us, really. Our existence gets more and more tenuous as every day goes by. It seems right now, and yet there's so much vibrancy and beauty in what people do as community and what they do alone that they bring to community, in art and science and making things work. I'm always fascinated by cities and what people accomplish when they come together to make civilization, right? Like, little pockets in New York, and things like the High Line, and just that to me is the best of humanity, and that's why they're vibrant in that tenuous situation, because that's what makes it possible for them to survive. And it's the only thing that will make it possible for us to survive if we should.
Yeah. I'm writing notes.
I feel pretty strongly about that, so I guess it comes through in most of my work.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think that in a second here we're going to talk about your novel, but so I'm going to ask Che and Kimberly and Morgan if you guys want to ask anything about what we've discussed so far about the story. Lots of listening.
Yeah, so listening.
There has been.
I haven't read it because I don't.
No, it's okay.
Don't do my homework.
Sometimes things pop up spontaneously, and sometimes they don't. So,
but when you were talking about the last train station at the end of the line, before you said that it's basically on its last legs, it just gets less care than the ones beforehand. We live at the end of a road where there aren't so many people. Our area of the road is the last one to get paved or plowed, and that it made me think of that, the last thing. But our road isn't going anywhere, and our people aren't going anywhere. We're staying where we are, so it's not disappearing. And I was wondering if it was more one or the other, but then you said that it's
yeah, I mean,
on its last legs, and they're going to have to move them, I guess. So people are going to move, or are they waiting till they're gone?
Those last holdouts will have to move to Drumtown probably, but I don't know, because things could change. The end of the story.
The end of the story leaves it open for many things to change.
And people get stubborn about where they live.
So
yeah, people get very, very very, very strong opinions about, about where they live.
And they'll put up with things that you wouldn't or they wouldn't think they would put up with in order to not move.
So I see Shay asking about sequels. Are you going to do sequels to this story specifically?
I hadn't thought about it, but I mean, I do, like, as I said, really like Fox and her parents, and Ryu. So, I mean, it could happen. I'm pretty involved in working on novels right now, but it could happen for sure. There's stuff.
All right.
There's plenty of possibilities there. So.
Let's scoot over, change tracks, as it were, to your novel a bit. Is this the same universe as the story?
It's the same wider universe, but it's much the story. Bourbon Sugar Grace takes place in a much earlier time in this science fictional universe. It's a little. It's still far out from us, but it's closer to Earth and Earth time. Substrate Phantoms and my other science fiction novel and the sequel to Substrate that I'm working on now are way far future science fiction. So they have that kind of element of fantasy that sometimes enters into far future science fiction, kind of in the tradition of C.J. Cherryh and some other people. I definitely cut my reading and writing teeth on Delaney and Le Guin and Cherry and Tanith Lee, people like that. So it's far future, and it's basically the name of the science fictional universe is the aggregate. So it's sort of wide flung planets and space stations and ships, and it's connected by the travel solution is what's called people travel through spin or wave space, and humans have what are called spin drives that allow them to travel that space. It's sort of the space between space.
Okay.
The substrate, as in Substrate Phantom.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can already get a vibe off of what Substrate Phantoms might be. Dun dun dun. Sounds cool. Yeah. So before I ask you about plot, I want to see what is it like for you? I mean, a lot of people have taken on far future science fiction, right? What was it like for you personally to explore into a future of your own devising, and were there particular things that you were trying to avoid or to aim for when you were doing that?
Well, what it's like for me is it's my happy place. It's definitely where it's happy. It's happy place. In fact, I'm very daunted by the idea of near future science fiction, but far future science fiction. It's like I can take all the cool stuff that I've read and the science that we have now and just kind of leap way far ahead and do whatever the hell I want, pretty much. And as for what I avoid, well, I definitely avoid a white universe or a monoculture universe, or I mean, the aggregate is widespread and very varied, and going off of current, our current Earth population, it's not terribly white at all, because I'm pretty much over whiteness, even though I'm white. It's just not very interesting by itself. I'm also Jewish, so as they say, I'm only white until I'm not. Which you know, I know I have plenty of privilege, but I'm at least a little aware. So other things I avoid. Well, it's more like what I want to embrace. I mean, it's, you know, it's also social science fiction is what I'm writing. Sort of social science fiction space opera. um,
Okay.
um, and I mean, that to me is what's, you know, besides all the sense of wonder and fun that it is to write far future science fiction, um, you know, with planets and ships and stations, it's, you know, all kinds of different cultures and art, and um, which is all great fun. It's having a future that hasn't kept the worst regressiveness of our current cultures and civilizations as a norm. Sorry, that was my dryer.
No problem.
So, you know, it's women do whatever the hell women want, just as men do, and there are in my far future science fiction world, there are what are called, there are regressive elements. There are what they call tailisters, which is from fundamentalist. And
can you write that in a chat bar for us, please?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is pretty much where most of that, and of course greed, which I guess we probably won't get rid of, or at least we haven't had it because it's a good conflict engine. So, but greed and fundamentalism of various stripes are where a lot of the engines of conflict come from, because those are the people who don't want people to let other people live, who want to impose their will, who want to change the universe to some image they think it is better or more pure or whatever. I have a very poor opinion of fundamentalists. So, and they're my books. So,
well, you know, you can put them together in such a way that they have no leg to stand on, and more power to you. So it's interesting, though. So is this is Substrate Phantoms? Does it have a sort of a home base in terms of, you know, a station or a planet?
It starts out on a station called Termagenti Station, which is in a little system, and has one inhabited planet in the system that's kind of partially terraformed, or they call it planet shaping, not terraforming. And
those terms in the chat bar for me.
Yes.
This will make my job so much easier when I have to write it all down. Please, the name of the station and then the terraforming term. Oh, planet shaping. Yeah. You said it and it went right through. So thank you for that. What's the name of the station too? Thank you. Awesome.
Yes. That's because at one point there's somebody's referencing a book that was, although they're not actually books, they call them other things, but something that was written about the station where they basically say she's just a very difficult station. So what was I saying? Yes. So it starts on Termagenti, and it takes place kind of half on the station and then half down on the planet Ash, with a ride on an automated shuttle in between for the two main characters to actually meet for the first time. So it's actually not in a traditional chapter structure.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's in basically the first part is the station. There's the middle part. Well, there's the prologue, and then the station, and then the middle part on the shuttle, and then down the planet. So, and it starts with what seems like haunting on the station. So that's the jumping off point.
Cool. Sounds cool. So, let's see. When you're thinking about these societies, how much work do you do on language and cultures in terms of just do you have identified languages and cultures that you've put together for these communities?
Not languages so much. Occasional words here and there, but I don't really tackle there's kind of, a standard trade language, for people to communicate with each other, and it's pretty widely used. Take a sip too.
Yeah, go ahead.
But cultures, yeah, I write, reams and reams of notes for myself on various cultures, and their religions and their beliefs and their arts and their educational styles and their mourning rites and their curse words and their music, just their economics, their, all that kind of stuff. Because like I said, for me, that's fun.
So Shay's asking, do you build from scratch?
Well, I think I take existing things that are, in our world and make mosaics. And some things I try to honor, so they're not so much from scratch, but I try to look at how they might have adapted or changed over so very long. So I don't know if I guess what I feel like is it's impossible for me to completely start from scratch.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I start with a blank page and then I come in with everything that informs my own sense of building various cultural houses and
So tell us a little bit about some of these cultures, because you've referenced art now twice. I want to hear a little bit about the art in this book.
Well, let's see. On Termagenti, there is one of the main characters is Tio Methian Tio, which in the culture of Termagenti, basically they people are referenced by their house, which is there's 4 main houses that started the station, and then by their family association. So being Tio Methian Tio means he's up there in the power structure. And TIO runs TIO Industries, which has a bit of a lock on the aggregate-wide market for. There's a technology that they use in this universe. It's Hive and Hiving from Archive.
Okay.
And it's basically the way they take in any kind of information, whether it's reading or listening or and the surface kinds of taking it in, or fully just some cats, fully immersive, sort of like virtual reality movies.
Oh, okay.
It's all Kiving and it's all Kives, although there's various technology in which that the various forms of technology that the Kives take, or the Kiving. There's just like I said, basic listening or reading, or there's a fully immersive experience. And TIO Technologies makes all of those, including providing studios where flash entertainments, which are kind of immersive movies, are made. And where was I going with that? Yes, the different the different art. So they, Meth is known as, is kind of in charge of the studios. He's a story coordinator for all these studios, and where they make everything from kind of operatic stories to pornography to documentaries, which is actually what he's involved in a documentary he's a troublemaker, and it's a documentary exposing corruption in his own family's trade access.
Ooh.
Which gets him in trouble. And there's a number of cultures that are referenced kind of regularly. Like there's a planet called Migrant, and they're known for making one particular kind of art, interactive sculptures. There are things called Tinchean hollow boxes, which are from a culture called Tinche, which are sort of lurid little boxes that have little play out little stories in them in hollow form, and they're all very lurid stories. Meth is also a fan of opera from various cultures and epic poetry from some others. There's just a variety of stuff that's referenced.
It sounds like super fun to put together.
It really is. I have fun. I also, it's also work, as everybody knows, but it's definitely fun. So, sorry, I'm having some sort of coughing fit.
I'm sorry too. I wish I could take I wish I could take the weight off of you, but I'm afraid that I don't know your work as well as you do. So.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Take your time.
I have a little nose blowing here.
As the jet lag kicks in.
Okay. And let's see, on various other things going on the station. There's a mural that tells a story that's sort of central to this particular system and the various cultures that settled it. It's the story of the Drift Witch, and drift is sort of drift refers to what happens in space when you lose control of your own propulsion. So it's sort of a curse word, but it's also sort of it's a charged word for this culture, for everybody in a space-going culture. And I don't know, just, the station is filled with stuff, with various clubs and restaurants and sports and all sorts of things are going on.
Cool. And yeah, this show covers a lot of topics. So I realized that anytime we say, hey, it's got clubs and sports and restaurants, so any one of those could be something we could go into at more depth. But I'm thinking maybe since it's getting close to 4, we started on the early side for us, and maybe
wow, that was
tired. Perhaps we should take some questions.
Questions?
Yay.
No.
Going Gurge. What you going back to that? And eruptions, is that from Regurgitate? Did you?
Yeah.
From there? Okay, good.
Oh.
So
Yeah, I always have a habit of pulling bits of words out of words, because I think that's part of how language shifts.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it would have shifted much more seriously in such a future, but it's a book and I want people to be able to read it. So, it's like,
yeah. So just because it's a question, you said sports on the station, does that mean that there's also a gambling culture or gambling subculture that goes along with that, or business?
there is, but I don't really go into it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to unless you've got a character who has an issue. But I was just curious.
It exists. And when I say sports, I'm not really a sports person, but there is a scene in which the other main character, Jinsey, plays a station game with a friend who's just back from traveling out system. So there's a sport. And the character
Have a sport.
Well, it's funny because it's sort of like these things get developed bits and pieces on like TV, like DS9 had gambling at Quarks, and no one knew how to play whatever they were trying to play. And so they have all these little background things that maybe more or less get cemented in. But do you feel like, are there things like cultural bits you feel get left behind once you go off planet, or is it I mean, far future, obviously they're not playing football.
No.
They're doing something.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, the game they play has, I think probably was influenced by my own, by many science fiction shows like DS9 or Battlestar Galactica, but it has, a ball in the air and sticks that have, that take charge from it, and stuff like that. You know? But there's definitely differences in the experience and worldviews of characters who have lived on a planet, you know, and those who have lived only on station or on ships, you know, and they think of the planets as gravity wells or gravity sinks. And, you know, and that has a long tradition too. I mean, C.J. Cherry has definitely, you know, mapped those kind of differences in experience and attitude. So there's definitely, you know, attention paid to how those different ways of living have structured different characters' perceptions and interactions with the world. I don't know if that answers the question.
No,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kimberly, anything from you, hon?
I was a little bit curious early on in your discussion of the novels. You mentioned that, you know, the transit or the transportation was being it sounded like you were describing a form of quantum transportation. You said something about the spin drive, and I was curious how deep you dove into that research-wise, and what you're building that on top of.
Well, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's not, I've read, you know, pretty much everything that I've come across about various modes of travel. And, you know, first they think, oh, maybe we can do this, and then no, you can't, and there's no such thing as faster than light, and forget it, and blah, 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 and wormholes. And, and I was kind of going off of some stuff I've read about. I mean, it was a leap, right? It's not based on any actual research, but it's going off of both the idea of wormholes and the idea that energy has a spin naturally, and then just sort of postulating something that we simply have, that science simply hasn't found yet, because that happens, right, all the time.
Right.
So it's definitely working with ideas, my own brain's ideas and conceptualizations of the quantum, and of something, some perception or key into the energy of space between systems and planets that we simply haven't, science hasn't figured out yet, and may.
Right.
I mean, it's definitely not current science based. It's just, it's my fix.
It's speculative because
Yes, it's very speculative.
Yeah. I was just curious if you'd run across something, because faster than light travel for a lot of far-flung humans in space type stories is always sort of the hang-up, right? You have some people that go with, you know, you have like Campbell who really gets into the time dilation, right? What you're seeing is something that happened 20 minutes ago. And then you have, you know, other authors, you know, in Scalzi's Old Man's War, you're actually sort of dipping into a parallel universe that's like, you know, like a milli whatever off of your existing universe. So technically, you're not even in the same universe you started in 20 jumps later. And so when the term spin so strongly ties to the idea of quantum spin, that I was just curious as to, is it, you know, what your custom method of solving.
Well, that's pretty much what it is. It's being able to key into an energy that we don't know how to key into now, or like key into something that's already there in the quantum universe, and kind of dance with it. It's which is why spin or wave is the terminology I'm using. And I think that my science is much less rigorous, certainly than Campbell or than Scalzi. There's a lot of people. I mean, it's a notion that I liked, and I wanted it to not be a stumbling block to my to my science fictional universe's like existence, because I'm not like I said, my science is not always as rigorous as some in science fiction. Sometimes it is. I mean, the opening scene, the prologue of the book is in terms of the hard science of the station and everything, is quite well researched. But as far as the space travel goes, I wanted to have space travel that wasn't really, really, really hard.
Well, here's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, like, you have to do something that is not going to get in the way of the story being told, right? I mean, if the space travel is not the point, then you don't really you can just sort of wave your hands at it and say, okay, we're just getting there. It's cool, right? I mean, there are some stories that for which getting into the nitty gritty of how it's accomplished is really important.
Yes.
And then there are others for which that is not important. I mean, my stories that are set on other planets, we just got there. Yeah. and there we are. And does it really matter how we got there? No. Yeah. So the needs of the story are what they are.
It's coming off of thinking about quantum energy and other stuff I've read about, very speculative stuff about space and energy in the universe. And then just doing what I wanted, essentially.
More power to you. All right. Well, we are at the end of our hour, and that was super fun. Thank you so much for being awake for us on a very jet laggy day. It was a pleasure to have you. I am going to so I have an announcement, which is that we are going to continue meeting, but Che is going to be in charge for the next 3 weeks. Yay, Che!
Guest hosting. I know. I hope people will still show up.
Yes, absolutely. We care about you, Che. I will not be able to show up.
I know.
But I'm sure that these will be fun discussions, because Che's got some really great topics that she has in mind. Bribery and libraries and teachers are going to be the topics for the next 3 weeks, and it's going to be at the standard Wednesday time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific. So tell your friends and come and support Che. And give me more work to do, because I want to be able to come back and go, oh my gosh, I have 3 hours of cool discussion to write a report on that I have to watch now. That's what I want to do. Yay! Anyway, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us about your work. This was really super fun.
Thank you.
Go read Bourbon Sugar Grace if you haven't. Go look for Substrate Phantoms and enjoy. And I thank you all for being here, and I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.